we have Mr. Krishnamurti Shankar, who's going to address us on sharpening the saw, training yourself for the new world. Mr. Shankar is the Group Head of Human Resource Development at Infosys, revolutionizing employee experience, driving talent and organization strategy. With over 30 years of experience leading HR for various organizations such as Bharti Airtel, Philips, Hindustan Unilever, he has facilitated transformation and capability development along with leading the transformation of HR into a strategic partner. He is also the current president of the National HRD Network, a pan-India body of HR professionals. Over to you, Mr. Shankar.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. A pleasure to be here. I think in the middle of the afternoon, around 1:30, you're going to be hearing from me talking about sharpening the saw. And I just thought, it's sometimes a good time, when you're just kind of in the middle of the day. This is a good time to really think about and reflect and see what we can do to really, be ready for the future. Yeah. And let me see if we can keep it interesting and keep you awake for the next, let's say, half an hour. But, I'm happy to really kind of, let you ask any questions at the end so that, if there's anything I can answer, I'll be happy to do that. But what I'm going to do is really kind of, give some practical tips. I think all of you have read a lot. There's so much about learning, so much about this across the world. Sometimes, there's too much of it, and then, maybe even become too much for many of us. But let me try and see some of the tips that we think will be useful to really make us ready for the future. Yeah. I think the question we all know, why do we need to continue to sharpen the saw? Is that there are change that's happening, which is much, much faster. Yeah? The kind of change, the speed of change is phenomenal. If you look at an IT industry, I mean, a software engineer in about 4 to 5 years, if he or she doesn't learn anything new, will become obsolete. And many other functions, wherever it is, it's in the range of between 5 to 10 years. You will become obsolete. Whatever you've learned, you've started in that range. Beyond that, I think it will become obsolete unless you continuously kind of keep learning. And that speed of change is increasing much more faster thanks to technology and everything. Also, we also are looking at it. Each of you would be saying, okay, I want to grow. I'm doing this role now. I want to take a bigger role. I want to be a CFO. I want to be a CEO. I want to be a group head of audit or whatever it is. You've got various things to do. And as you keep thinking, you got to really build new capabilities to pick up that new role, right? So therefore, for your own growth is very important. And number two, the speed at which we are all in a kind of a running kind of a treadmill, because if you're not keeping pace with it, we'll be left behind. So we got to keep pace with learning so that at least even for standing still, you need that. So both for your growth and for standing still in this fast-growing world, fast-moving world, we need to continue to keep learning. So let me ask you a question. There's a simple test that I kind of follow. It's a 4-question test. We all think we're all learning. When I ask myself, I am learning a lot. Every day I read something. I learn a lot. But there are certain things that sometimes we don't do. I am particularly very notorious with going through any e-learning and stuff like that. I probably don't do it as well as I should. But if I really look at it, there is this 4-question test that I have, and maybe I'd like you to all look at it. If you think you're learning, you got to answer these 4 questions. The first question is what I call as a CV test. Write your CV every year. And in that CV, ensure that at least 25% of the things should be something new. Yeah, not the same job one more year, but some big new project you've never done before. That should be there. If that is not there, you're not learning. Yeah. So the CV test, write your CV, ensure that at least 25% of that CV has got something new that you've done in the last year. The second test is what I call as, have you learned any new skill or a habit or a hobby, whatever it is in the last 1 year? It could even be simple behavior. For example, you could say, listen, I used to run 2 kilometers. Now I'm at least running 10 kilometers. You build something. That's good. Or you'll say, listen, I've been a guy who, for people like me, uh, there are certain things that I never could do. For example, on Excel, I've learned something new on that. So maybe that's also a new skill. So look at something new that you've learned. Or even a habit. For example, listen, I get angry very much. I've now started to really, take time and talk to people and do that. Or I've started to now mentor people. So these are new things that you picked up, which you can say, yes, you learned. Yeah. So that's the second thing. The third area of learning, third test is, you know, is there something that you always believed was true so far, but you've changed it in the last year? For example, you would have said, listen, I know it's always, this is how it will be, this is how, like, for example, in HR, there's always the thing like, for high potential, this is how you will assess high potential. But after some time, I thought, listen, I learned last year that, listen, that's not the right way. What I've been doing in the past is probably not right. We got to look at something else. That's learning. So any thought or a fixed mindset that you've had over the years, which you've changed, then you've learned something. And the last one is, have you taught anything new to people? Yeah. Have you taught something new, taken a session or something new? It's not about, listen, this is general audit or something like that. No. For example, have you taught something about, let's say, new technology, the use of new technology in audit, and have you taken a session on that? Or the use of behavioral science in audit or something like that, something which is new, something where you kind of gone and taught somebody. When you teach somebody, you learn. Yeah. So these are the 4 tests. So I think every year we got to ask ourselves these 4. If you're doing this, then it's fine. Then you're learning. If you're not doing even 3 of those, then I think we've got to kind of, improve the speed at which we learn. Okay, well, I found this very useful. It's not that, but some of these, the CV test my boss told me about a few years back. He said, listen, unless you write your CV and say you got something new, you've not done anything new. Yeah, because doing the same thing again and again is not experience, but you got to try and do something new. Yeah. So I think these 4 are very, very useful tests. Keep it as a test to really see how you're learning. So that's the first stage. And when you look at it, you'll say, okay, maybe I need to learn. Then the question comes, what to learn? Yeah. I think there are 2 concepts I want to talk about here, which is very, very important as we look at it. I think learning is always across time. Yeah. There is some learning you want to do for today and some learning for the future. So you got to keep this in mind. And this is a very, very important thing. Normally, we end up doing a lot of learning for today, which may not help. So, but there is always some learning for today, some new skill you want to learn, some new government regulation has changed, you want to learn something. There is some new kind of guidelines on how M&A should be done, you learn. So that's fine. That's what you need to learn for today. But you also need to learn for tomorrow. That starts with you setting an ambition or an aspiration, saying, this is what I want to be tomorrow. You'll say, listen, I'm now heading audit for a firm, but tomorrow I want to really become the CFO. And to do that, you got to start learning something. It could be maybe working on more business work or strategic thing or something like that. So therefore, always think, what is it I need to learn for today? And what is it that I need to learn for tomorrow? Yeah, your future. And that future is what your aspiration is. Put simple things. And it's just that saying, this is what I'll be looking at. And these are the 2 things I need to start working on so that I'm ready for the future. Yeah. So that's very important because it keeps you there. The second concept that I want to really talk about in learning is what I call as the broad learning and the deep learning. Yeah. You've all heard of the T skill, everybody talks about. A broad learning is very important, especially for people in internal audit. Because you got to understand everything. You got to understand how processes work. You got to understand what are the changes. So that broad reading is learning is very important. And that is very different way you learn that. Yeah, you learn that from just reading a lot, talking to a few people. So that thing is critical. That means building your perspective, business knowledge, understanding about global supply chain, understanding about talent stuff. So therefore, understanding about technology, what is happening. So that broad learning is critical because that helps you build a perspective. And in your role, it's very important to have that breadth. Then there is a deep learning. And that deep learning is something we say, listen, I want to understand. I'm taking a small example. How can we use technology, better use of technology in audit? Or what are some of the other, so think about it and then go deeper and understand that and learn that. How about audit in mergers? What are some of the things that we should be doing better? So there you go deeper and learn deeper. Yeah. So therefore, in every learning, think about the broad learning and the deep learning. A deep learning has to be one or two areas where you're passionate about. So you got to go deeper and understand and become an expert in it. And broad learning is where you build a habit of just understanding what it is. It'll come through talking to people. It'll come through, being part of business discussions so that you get that perspective. Yeah, so I think these are two important things that you got to keep in mind as you look at learning. And the last part I want to talk about is how you learn. And this is very critical, yeah, because you got to make learning easy for you. You got to make learning interesting for you. Yeah, you got to make learning things that comes with your natural kind of a thing. There is a concept nowadays they talk of in behavioral economics called habit stacking. Yeah, habit stacking. That means if there is a habit that you love doing, you add another new habit to it. Yeah, take an example. For example, I love drinking tea in the morning or whatever it is. Along with that, can I add a new habit? Can I say, okay, along with that cup of tea, can I take 15 minutes to go through what's happening I want to read the McKinsey quarterly. I just want to read what is happening on, technology in that time. So think of that, and therefore you build something new. Yeah. So therefore, learning is always something that you got to build, which is easy for you to do. Yeah. Don't put too many barriers; you'll never learn. So make it easy for you. In India, I don't think naturally many of us are great lovers of e-learning. We do a little bit, then we go, and that's where all this gamified stuff and all are coming. I'm not sure how much that helps people, but it's important to enjoy what you're learning. Yeah, and therefore, that's the first step in how you want to learn. Make it part of something you love. Make it enjoyable. That's how you will learn. The second thing is your style of learning. Yeah, there are some people who learn by kind of working. Actually have to work on projects. They have to hands-on work, then they learn a lot. There are some people who like to think. Give them a thing, they'll write, they'll make a concept, they'll read a few books, they'll think about it, and that's how they learn. So they're more what they call as abstract conceptualization. They use their thinking. There are some who kind of lead by this active experimentation I mentioned about. So therefore, each one has a different thing. So you have to find out what is it that you really love. Is it which model is something that comes naturally to you. So pick about that. Then there are various ways in which you can pick up learning. Different types of media. I think the first one is the e-learning courses, yeah, that are there, and there are MOOCs, and nowadays a lot of MOOCs which are what they call as massive online courses, which you can go for, and that helps you build different things. So look for relevant ones in that. Some of them are very good for deep learning because it goes into one topic. But some of them could be general. You want to understand broadly what's happening to supply chain. You can go for a MOOC and understand what's there. So therefore, you understand your need and fit that bit here. So the e-learning part through a MOOC or a e-learning is a good one. And normally most corporates have some things in their own kind of learning thing. And that's much more structured. But there are other learning which are very, very much more important. The next one I would call is learning on the job. And this is where you learn the most. In theory, in HR theory, there is a principle they use called 70-20-10. Yeah, 70% they say is learning on the job. You do by actually doing something. 20% you learn from others, talking to people, mentors, bosses. You learn from other people, and 10% you learn through training programs. So therefore, actually going through an e-learning training program, you learn only 10%. That's what the theory is. I change it because with so much change happening, so much new thing coming, I see this is a little different. I would say 50, 30, 20. Still on the job learning is high, but 50. But learning from others is much more, about 30%. And 20% is really these e-learning courses and books. That's my personal view. So therefore, going back on the job, take projects. Something that you're doing in your work, try something new. Say, I want to be part of this. You will learn a lot. Yeah. So try and do that. The third area which I mentioned is the middle part, the 50, 30, 20. The 30 is learning from others. This is where you have to really widen your network. Talk to a few more people. Expand your network. Within the internal audit group, you would know people. but expand your network to other finance professionals, maybe other industry professionals, technology, see what's happening. Yeah. So therefore, you learn a lot from the network that you interact with. So therefore, that's very important. Take one or two mentors. It's good to really have mentors, and especially new areas. For example, people have mentors in kind of in their leadership style. How can I be a better leader, better leading my team? So that's one area where normally a coach or a mentor helps. But also in new areas like technology or understanding of strategy. Look at somebody, talk to them, and build that. So that's very important. The third is social media, whatever it is, LinkedIn, Twitter. I think this is very good for this broad learning. It helps you stay in touch with what's happening. It helps you pick some best practice with others. It's got its merits. Yeah. You don't have to spend all your days on it, but follow key things. There are good handles or accounts that may share things. So it's good to really spend maybe half an hour, 20 minutes a day just going through what is there, so you get to know what is happening. Yeah. So therefore, the social learning is pretty good. It helps you pick up some broad thing, but you have to make it a practice. Go on to LinkedIn, go on to Twitter, be a member, follow the right people, see what is happening, because that helps you build your breadth and that thing. Yeah. I think broadly those are the things. And the last one is really reading articles, and therefore, again, it helps you with that breadth of learning. Maybe also sometimes you're deaf, but it helps you with that breadth. So I think that's what I would say is a way of how to do it. I think I've covered all of this. So I've given you the test of learning, the 4 questions you got to ask yourself to see how you're learning. The what you got to learn, I think the 2 principles that you got to do, the principle of now and the future, and the principle of the broad learning and deep learning. Yeah, so those are the 2. And then we've looked at the different the types of learning. Yeah, your styles that you want. Make a habit thing, link it to things that you like doing, so you learn more. And thirdly, we covered a few media. So therefore, the 3 key, the 4 or 5 media that sources that you can use to do learn. I think that's broadly what I wanted to say. I think learning is always a habit. Yeah, it's a thing. If you look at what Satya Nadella says in his book, if you look at a Microsoft example, they moved from know it all to learn it all. Yeah, I think it's clear mindset change saying, listen, nobody knows everything now. Now we start learning, because things are also changing. If we go with a thing that, listen, I'll know everything, it won't be possible in today's world. You got to say, listen, I won't know everything. Let me learn and see how I go along. And that's something that you got to consciously put some time, so therefore it's there. The second thing about learning is all about what they call as this is a growth mindset, because every opportunity you get, see what can I learn from it. The research shows that people learn most when they think, okay, what can I learn from this? If they start thinking before they do something, they will learn a lot more. For example, I'm just taking an example. Suppose you've taken on a project. Yeah, you're an internal auditor of a company. You now want to do a project on, let's say, the talent supply chain. How is the talent supply chain going? So you're kind of working on some project. But before that, think about it. What do I want to learn in this project? Put 2 or maybe not much, just 2 or 3 bullets. Say these are things you want to learn. The minute you think about it, the once you work on your project, you'll actually learn more. Yeah. So your mind starts kind of. So therefore, think about what you want to learn before you do something. You will learn a lot more. And the last habit I would say is share your learning. Yeah, I think sharing your learning helps you really learn more. It creates that positive feeling. It gets more dopamine in your system. Write an article on LinkedIn, put a small post, whatever it is. The minute you share, you feel good about it and you start learning more. Or write a small journal, once in 15 days, once a month. And if you want, share it with your team. There's a CEO I was speaking to yesterday. He said, listen, one of the things I do is I write down the whole week what are some of the key things I learned in the week, and I send it to my team. And now he's saying my team is also sending me every week. So therefore now there's lots of people kind of just writing, these are some things that I learned, I did, etc., etc. So I think journaling it, writing about it, sharing it really creates more learning. It kind of keeps you completely engaged in it. So I think I just thought those are the only things I wanted to share with you. I hope it was useful. It's very important. Any role, anywhere it is, we got to build our own habit of learning. Yeah, it's a personal habit. I've tried to give you some tips. Hope you can work on it, and I'm sure you'll be sharpening yourself and ready for the future. Thank you, and over to you for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shankar. So we have a couple of questions that have come our way. The first one being, how do you advise we compartmentalize our day in order to include some structured learning? Because, the standard excuse that most of us tend to give is, I don't have time for it. So how would you advise we compartmentalize it?
No, I think each one has to find a way to do it. Yeah. As I said, there is something called the depth learning. Something you want to go. You can't do it every day. You keep an hour or two, maybe on a day, maybe one day a week, a Friday or something, or a weekend. Say, listen, I want to go into depth. So therefore, that's important that you keep at least an hour or two for that a week. The broad learning, I think, can be done much more easily every day. You can say, listen, every day I want to sometime, and it's like just after lunch, half an hour, read something. Or morning, as I said, if you love having a cup of tea or a coffee or something, and you've been reading newspapers, fine, stop the newspapers after you've done, but say, listen, the next half an hour I want to do something. I think that's a good way. So find some time which suits you. Maybe in the evening before whatever it is, find some time where you just scroll through stuff, see what is happening, and build that in. But a lot of learning, as I said, is in your actual job. Every day your job, you do learning. It's not that you're sitting and learning. It's actually by doing. And for that, you got to say, okay, consciously saying, what have I learned today? What is something new that I've come? So once you start putting your mind to it, the learning will come automatically. You will be able to really, start thinking. So it's just a question of tuning your mind to everyday work, saying, boss, what did I learn out of this meeting? What was something interesting? And just keep thinking, and that will help you keep picking up lots more things. So for the more conscious effort, fit in some time, but you learn a lot in your day-to-day work. For that, you need a mindset of saying, just putting in, what am I learning? And then probably that will help you.
So I think the next question then, is an extension of your answer that you said. It more often becomes very overwhelming when there's like so much to learn around you. There's so many platforms to learn from. There's so many articles to read. So how should we deal with that feeling, of not being overwhelmed, but starting somewhere? The first step is what matters, but then, being overwhelmed, you just shut everything and sit.
I know it's a very, very good question, because nowadays, if you just go, there's so much to learn. Yeah, I think you'll be going all over the place. I think I've found is, you identify your areas of interest. When I spoke in the thing about what you want to learn, just kind of put it saying, listen, these are some areas that is interesting to me. For now, this is what I want to do. For my future, these are two things I want to really work on. So put that clear. Then you say, okay, broad area, I just want to understand what's happening in business. Depth, these are two things. So once you have some kind of a mind map saying this is it, that really helps you really focus on things, because then you will not waste time on all the other stuff. So therefore, be clear about that. Secondly, let me try and give some tips here. For the broad learning, it's good. I mean, the social media is a good one. General reading is good, because, but don't go too far. Just look at one or two which are ones which you kind of I'm just taking, for example, you can say, okay, maybe a BCG magazine, or a McKinsey quarterly, or gives me something interesting to read. So just follow that. Or one or two people in your industry who tweet a lot, or who are kind of posting a lot, maybe look at ones and see if they're making some sense. Maybe you can follow that. So those kind of things help you pick up what is happening generally in the industry, what are some new thinking, more in the broad learning kind of a thing. So once you're focused there, then I think you'll be able to really, but it's a danger. Don't go and say, I want to learn everything, because learn what you're passionate about, what you think is relevant for you. Start with that. I think then once you build it, you'll soon find a kind of a rhythm on how you want to really expand your learning.
Right. So the next question is, you spoke about the importance of networking in any profession, and very specific also to our profession. Given the pandemic, how would you advise, apart from LinkedIn, where you just cold mail people or coldly add people, how do you how do you advise us to network?
See, the LinkedIn networking is a waste, frankly. I mean, you'll send somebody as a connect after that, neither somebody bothers nor you bother. It's like, it's not. But you got to do it in a conscious way. Say, listen, what I want to learn, and therefore follow people who you learn. So that's the way you'll be able to connect, and then maybe with 2-3 people, you have to really learn in a more active way. Yeah, just making connections is of no use normally. It just makes you feel good saying I've got so many connections, but I think we never use any of those. Yeah, lesser connections, but the ones where you're finding more use is valuable. I think the best one here, I think, is this. You got to, and these are 2 or 3 tips that I have kind of heard from people. One is identify 1 or 2 mentors or 1 or 2 thought leaders who you think you can learn from. Tell them, listen, I just want to have a chat with you once. Maybe there is somebody working already in your company, yeah, or wherever you're working, or in a firm, or for example, I'm just saying, like, I work in Infosys. I say, listen, once a month, I want to call up somebody in EY and just talk about what is happening there. Just find 1 or 2 people like that. But you find different people, yeah. Somebody to talk to you about what is happening in the industry. Somebody to talk to about what is happening in terms of regulatory or whatever it is. So it'll help you find. So identify 1 or 2 people, just chat with them, once a quarter, once a month. That helps, because then you start, building. There's also something people use called there's a standard nice phrase, their personal board of directors, saying these are 4-5 people who are there. Each one is different. One guy is a leader, one guy is an expert in finance, one guy is something in marketing. They'll help you. So that's something you can try, though I've not seen everybody having time for it. But yes, 2 or 3 different people. What it means is it's just not one mentor. Go for 2-3 people so that you can learn more. I think these are the ways to really build. And therefore, once you find something interesting, then you can expand that. You can attend, talk to people, read what they write, connect with them and say, listen, I want to have a chat. That way, I think people will, you'll be able to kind of pick up, and you also build strong relationships. Yeah. So therefore, go with a clear focus, go with an intent to learn, go with an intent to add value. And when you add value, then I think your relationship actually builds and you also learn.
Right. I have one final question, which is, how does someone who has not indulged in learning for a long time get started? Often that's the biggest hurdle, to get started, right? So how does one do that?
Well, it is, frankly, if somebody says I've never learned, that's wrong, because you've been learning all this while and but you've not been conscious. Yeah. So therefore, learning happens all the time. Yeah. There's something that is happening, but you're not doing it consciously. So therefore, just imagine the power that if you're much more conscious, how much you can learn. Yeah. So therefore, that's the first step. I think is the first step is in your mind saying, okay, what do I want to learn? How do I want to learn? Just think about it. I think, and you learn from everything that you see. You learn from every interaction. You will learn. For example, the speech I made now, I learned something. Just by talking, you learn, because there are some things that you say, but maybe this makes sense. So I think there's learning in everything you do, everything new you do. But I think the first step, therefore, is the mindset, and the mindset of saying, what do I learn from this? What did I learn new? Yeah, just ask yourself that. I think that's the first step. Once you do it, I think you'll see some new ideas coming up. The second step is then saying, okay, how do I expand this knowledge? What new things I want to learn? And that's where you go to the framework of, what do I want to learn now and for the future? What is my broad learning agenda and my deep learning agenda? Put that and keep it specific. Don't go so much that you can't do. Just 2 or 3 things and say, okay, I want to do it. That will help you, because that will help you give an agenda, that will help you give you focus. And then the third step is choose things that you like. You can, if you're very much a fan of reading good articles, go subscribe to a Harvard Business Review or something and read. That gives you good knowledge. Therefore, and there may be others within the audit fraternity. You can read those. So therefore, you then find things that you like. Somebody likes social media, learn from that. Somebody likes to watch videos. There are lots of videos. I mean, if you just go to any of the MOOCs or anything, there are hundreds of videos. Even YouTube is great. For those who want to do it, identify key people, you'll find lots to learn there. So therefore, but you got to just keep that half an hour, 45 minutes on a weekend or on any other day, and you'll be able to really pick up something new. Yeah. So therefore, start with that learning mindset in terms of how do I learn, what do I learn, what am I learning. Number two, create your agenda for learning in terms of what you want to learn. Number three, choose things that are really easy for you, in line with your habit, in line with what you want to do, and therefore that makes it easier for you to do without making it a struggle. It's like, if anybody wants to go to a gym, make things easy, keep a gym that is nearby, keep the time that is nearby, don't put it at the peak of the day where there'll be so many calls, then you'll never do it. Yeah. So similarly for learning, you got to create and say, I want to remove all barriers. What are the things? Just remove that and keep a time and a place and this, therefore you can learn.
All right, I'll just wait for one more minute to see if there are any more questions. So the gym example is true. Now, so we are blaming lockdown now. Even if it's nearby, we are going to blame the lockdown for it. All right, I think that's, I don't have any more questions. If there are, I'll definitely forward them to you. I would really like to thank you for, giving us the tips on the 4-question test, because like you said, we've been subconsciously learning and we don't prepare our CV on a yearly basis. I think that really helps to have those 4 questions answered to know if we have really learned something over the past year or not. The broad and the deep learning and what to learn for today and what to learn for the future definitely helps to compartmentalize what we should learn at all and then go about learning it. Thank you so much, Mr. Shankar, for your time today. It was a really nice session for us.
Thank you. Been a pleasure being here and wish you the best, all of you. Thank you.